name is Gavin Skerritt. I am with the BBPA, and I would like to welcome everyone who's on the call now. So this is the 6th installment of the Ask a Professional series. The BBPA supports Black businesses and professionals across the GTA. Ask a Professional is a BBPA series providing ongoing dialogue and consultation with industry experts in a wide range of fields. Business owners have the opportunity to have specific relevant questions answered about their business concerns by various proven industry professionals, and they also have the opportunity to learn from the questions posted by others in the business community. Whether you're an established business owner or if you're considering launching a startup, this series is an opportunity to equip yourselves with the tools and the know-how that will bring you success. The BBPA is here to help the Black business community in their respective niches, and this series will facilitate open discussions that are applicable to a wide range of industries. And just a few housekeeping things, as I mentioned before. If you have any questions, please, you can post it in the chat area. And if you raise your hand, I will be happy to call on you to ask your questions. If you can, I see most of you have your phones on mute. Thank you so much for that. And then once I call on you, you can unmute and ask your questions. Okay, so today's guest is Dr. RUSTUM Southwell. Dr. Southwell is the founding CEO of the Black Business Initiative, and he is currently a BBPA silent member. Highly respected for his advocacy for African Canadians through entrepreneurial leadership, Dr. RUSTUM Southwell is synonymous with economic diversity, entrepreneurial development, and a capacity building in marginalized communities. He was one of the first Black business franchisees in Nova Scotia and owned and managed various restaurants for many years before becoming the executive director of the African Canadian Business Development Center. Dr. Southwell is best known as the founding CEO of what he considers to be his life's work, which is the Black Business Initiative, or BBI. Unique in Canada, BBI addresses the fundamental challenges inherent to Black business owners in Nova Scotia. And he has a demonstrated history of nonprofit organization management with extensive expertise in government, business consulting, corporate governance, and strategic planning. He has shepherded the creation and expansion of hundreds of Black-owned businesses and continues to do so even now. Once again, welcome RUSTUM, Mr. Southwell, Dr. Southwell. Can you please say a few words to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone from Nova Scotia. I guess maybe just afternoon in Toronto as well. Well, first, I just want to shout out the two Nova Scotians I can see on there, Charles and Sylvia, who are colleagues in Halifax. And also, I was just telling Gavin, I was wearing the Nova Scotian tartan today because those of us who've been following the news, we have this awful tragedy of a mass shooting, which we normally associate with the United States, but it has come to our shores. Right now, the RCMP is saying at least 19 souls have been lost, and they expect more as they go along. So our heart is already a little heavy with the COVID pandemic is even heavier at this point. Um, I actually came here in the early 70s from the small island of St. Kitts. And it's kind of funny how things comes around, because as it turned out, Gavin's dad lived directly across from my home, and we spent a lot of years together. And so I'm also familiar with his mom, who went to high school around the time. So I'm really happy to be here. But more importantly, I want to thank Nadine and BPPA for doing this and inviting me to actually give some thought and information on what's involved when dealing with funding, government funding and strategies, the background strategies, the information, the contacts and so on. We have a deck and some other information to share if folks would need that as well. So I'm looking forward to a conversation around the nuances of moving around in that network and how to use best strategies to deal with the people and the policies as well. And finally, just before coming on, those of you who've been following the Prime Minister, he made some announcements which should be encouraging for organizations and not-for-profits in particular. Additional 350 million was just announced this afternoon. That would be used for not-for-profits who are trying to navigate the new reality of remote workplace and other having volunteering in those issues. Now, usually when the announcement happens, it has to go back to the bureaucratic staff to turn it into an actual item. But it's quite encouraging to hear that. And we hope that we benefit from that. So, yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Rustum. We appreciate that intro, and thanks for the information. Okay, so what I'd like to do now, I'd like to begin with a few questions. So first of all, can you tell me some key tricks when dealing with government staff of funding?
I don't know if I want to describe them as tricks publicly, but there's some strategies and techniques that create better results if one's prepared. One of the things I found, once you've figured out what is it you're looking for and what you're dealing with, then there'll be you're now sat face to face with people. And so the chances are that we tend to want the most senior level person who is normally not the influencer. And so part of it, when you know which department or what area you're looking for, if you're a not-for-profit organization, part of it is obviously seeing if you can figure out who are the persons who have the connections and pulling the string, and have that person's card and contact and start making the efforts in there. Usually, you know, for the government structure, there's a politician who put the big ideas out there, and it has to be handed off to a department. And normally the department would have a director general, a CEO, and others. And then the folks who would report into those. Well, the folks who report in are the ones who get ignored, but those are the ones, if they're on side to what you're doing, would be the folks who you can use to get your proposal or your strategy recognized. And if those guys are calling you back, then you'll win, because if you're not getting a call, then it's likely that it's on the cutting room floor. I mean, that's one of the quick and easy. But before that, you should know what the policies are, what the agency does, and align your strategy to what they want to do. And I'll say, go as far if it's a federal government strategy. I would say check out the minister who is involved and read their mandate letter. a simple thing like that to see what they're responsible for. And if it's a provincial organization, get an idea what that ministry does. I think Nova Scotia is lucky that we're the only provincial government with a Department for African Nova Scotian Affairs. So if we can't get it at the Department of Business, we can ask African Nova Scotian Affairs to give us some guidance. Those are some of the things that I can say just off the top.
Okay, and thank you for that. So I do have another question, but I'd like to invite the listeners to chime in. If you do have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I can call on you. Not yet. Okay, so Rustum, if you can, I mean, sometimes, well, I've gotten phone calls from business owners over the past few weeks, and one of the complaints is that they're having trouble navigating through, you know, all the news. So my question is, why is it so difficult for some people to find out about what funding is available for whether it's small businesses or larger businesses?
And I mean, good question. There's so much stuff that's happening right now. I think even the people who put in the information out don't know what's happening. You know, last week, Minister Jolly was in Halifax, she's the Minister of the Cabinet, and she was saying certain things about to happen. And one of the MPs down after she left, he said, we want to just hold that a while because the Prime Minister is in his session tomorrow or something slightly differently. That's how quickly with the COVID, those things are happening. So right now for a business owner and even an employee, it's changing so quickly that whether you're on EI or SERV, there's so many different things that's in almost a cocktail soup of initiatives that's happening currently that you really are overwhelmed. So we've taken the position to be like a navigator or a filter for folks in our constituency. I know we didn't go through the deck, but BBI serves the province of Nova Scotia as a business development agency. And so what we've been doing is taking that information, filtering it, and as one person asks us, trying to put it in bullet form and interpreting what's going on or what's happening. So in Halifax, the Chamber of Commerce hosts chamber and labor and community sessions on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for about an hour on our webinar. And we attend that and see some of those policies, because it's clear that if you're supposed to follow those, you'll be up all night trying to read and never come to some of these answers. So like for this session, we were saying that maybe we can have folks who need websites and so to send it back to them. But it's to find out where to go. If you go on the federal government web page, the coverage page of economic response, you can navigate that quite easily. And similarly, Nova Scotia, I'm sure Ontario as well. But having that alone is only the first part of it. You need support agency like BDPA. There's a lot in the Help Guys hack in Nova Scotia, and the Association of Social Workers are putting some of the information up. And between the chamber and folks like us, helping guys to navigate the huge amount of opportunities here. And an example is the provincial government has a grant that can go up to $5,000. So we've gone out and send that out in our social media so that our clients and Black business owners and sole proprietors can apply for that fund.
Okay, thank you for that. I see that we have a question from Nadine. Nadine, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Hi, Rustum.
Hey, Ned.
Thank you so much for being here. And I did want to let you know that, our heart is with the people of Nova Scotia during that time. So I thank you for being here at this time. Two questions. One is, we have a lot of members that ask about procurement at all levels, and especially procurement at the federal level, which I think maybe there's more funds there when a contract is awarded. What would you, based on your experience, for a company that's, say, under $1 million or 500,000 and under, what would you advise the 2 or 3 best tips for a company that's sort of in that threshold, which is a small enterprise of 500,000 or $1 million and under, to get a federal contract? That's the first question. The second question is, can you share an example? Like you have great examples of members of BBI that has gotten larger contracts, and what were their particular successes in terms of business foundation that allowed them to get those larger contracts?
Okay. So I'll take them in order. The companies that's doing $500,000 to $1 million sometimes think that they're tiny, but they're, judging from the chamber in Halifax, they're probably about 80%, maybe even higher of the companies in that range. So you shouldn't be afraid because you're making that. Of course, you're not going to be a utility like Irving and so on. So the average company around you, that's the range they're making, between 500,000 to maybe on the 5 million. The companies that provide and the government, when they're looking at doing contracts, they do it based on a certain expectation of what you're capable of doing. So if you're only making $200,000, then don't bid on a $3 million contract, because the guys would rule you out right away because they don't think you have the capacity. But if you intend to do that, then secure a partner and go in as part of a partnership. Sometimes the tendency is not to realize the idea of a slice of the pie is better than none of the pie. Doesn't go completely down there. So for companies who are doing that, and also, and I know Cassandra and Campsey and those guys, we're actually trying to push the government partners in terms of diversity in procurement, because a lot of the times Black companies and racially visible companies are marginalized based on an expectation that's the performance expectation. So we also want to push the government to insist that contractors and subcontractors have a diversity lens when they're actually selecting procurement partners. So it's not only, hey, we can't get the big contract, but when the big contractors get the contract, then they should be held to a standard that they should be bringing on diversity into the procurement cycle. And I know some people are pushing for that right now. But we also can't only depend on the lobbyists and the advocates. We also have to depend on performance. So one of the best ways to get jobs is to show that you're capable with a good level of performance, with good results. And when that happens, a lot of companies will be better. So for the small company person, get your ducks in a row, be prepared, and pick the projects that you have expert skills in delivering. Those are the kind of off the head sort of pick tools that small companies can benefit from. So for your other question, I might have to get you to retweet me on that one, because I know where I was going with it, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I wanted you to share, you have great examples. That's one of the things I like about what you do, is that you have great examples of companies in the millions of dollars that has gone through, worked with the BBI to success. So I wanted you to share maybe one of those stories in terms of funding at a larger amount of funding.
So there's a couple of companies that I can identify that we work with. One of them is a lady had a company called Kanjam Trading that in the export business with fisheries, saltfish to Jamaica and back and neck. or neck and back, as they say in Jamaica. And I recall she was trying to break in on the South Shore in Nova Scotia, where the big lobster fishermen were squeezing her out. And she was paying a consultant some huge amount of funds and couldn't get into the deputy minister's office with some of the issues that she had. And she didn't think we could help her. But just from our connection, we actually did a presentation to the deputy minister at the time, showed the impact she was having, had him tour her manufacturing packing corporation. And that changed the whole majorly. She was one of the ones who first publicly thanked her. She was doing millions of dollars in sales in that market as well. But she had been on the periphery because of that. And that's one of the strongest stories in terms of procurement and government type support and investment, because there's a large amount of money that was involved in the particular farm. But one of the companies that really was a good example, which we can connect with what's going on now with COVID, was for those of you guys who remember when AIDS was a big thing, and there's I think it's a biochemist who developed the first dry AIDS test, Dr. Kiramura, who actually went to the science and IRAP and those investment got some funding to develop a strategy to solve testing the AIDS cells instantly, the instant type of package. And that was one of the areas. He eventually bought a school and had a plan. He's retired now, originally from I think it's Uganda, but grew a company to 200 or 300 staff very, very successfully.
Yeah.
On the cover of The Economist magazine, using like today, the Prime Minister speaking about the cluster, which is in Halifax, the one in Halifax is the ocean cluster. We're using those resources that most companies from the mainstream tap into, our companies to support that commercializing a tool that he had developed. And that was one of the bigger companies in Nova Scotia, more successful. There are others, of course.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for the question, Nadine, and for the answers, Rustum. Our next question comes from Sylvia. Sylvia, can you go ahead with your question, please? Sylvia?
You're on mute, Sylvia.
Okay, let's move on. We do have another question coming from Charles.
Okay, sorry, I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sylvia.
No, I was just imagining that you were going to read the question. So I'm going to go and find it. So my question is, how finely delineated are the categories of business? Small business, women-owned business, category of registration on joint stock, and so on. And is the funding dollars calculated so that the announcement that we're hearing, or do you think that those dollars are calculated based on the data related to those categories?
So if I hear you correctly, you're asking what are the various categories of the business in terms of how they're registered as well as in terms of size?
Right, so I was, suggesting some samples, but trying to understand what the interconnection is between coming to an amount that is meant to be impactful on the businesses. Have any insight into that, I guess?
So I may interpret it wrong, but so in terms of businesses, you're not talking about sole proprietorship, incorporated, and that's what you're speaking about?
Yes, that part. And then like I said, like if there's specific, so it could be sole proprietorship and women owned, like you know, how are they, do we have a sense about how government is doing that in terms of the dollars that they come up with that they think is going to be impactful for us?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll have a gander at it. So I mean, businesses are incorporated in different ways. We had that conversation at BBPA board meeting last week and determine how they register. So for Nova Scotia, and I guess for other provinces in Canada, it'll be the joint stock. And obviously, you can incorporate Inc., which gives you some protections on the law. And there's limited liability, which is another structure. It's close to as close to a not-for-profit doing real business as possible, possibly called a social enterprise in some areas. And there are partnerships with partnerships can also be part of a Inc. Company. And those are most often, if not one, of the legal structures around setting up a business. When the government, I take it you're thinking about with COVID, when the government are looking at doing work, then they look at the various groupings of sectors, like a small business or marginal business, women business owners, racially identified business owners, whether it's a Black business or a different, I don't like the term minority, but racially visibly owned companies as well. So if you're asking me how that plays into the mix, up front, the government like to believe, well, we design it so that everybody is accessible. Unfortunately, it doesn't always manifest itself that way. So that's why you have organizations like us, BBPA, who would lobby and push for not special circumstances, but a significant recognition that we too are making impact in the economy. So the numbers does play in it, but the tendency is to just that I put a note up about Prime Minister Trudeau saying that you have all Americans, there's no such thing as all Canadian. But the tendency is to hide behind that idea when speaking to especially the black owned companies. And so what we tend to expect is that when these funding come out, if we're not early in the planning, we normally get marginalized. So there's some of us in the Push Coalition and others who are saying right now, nothing about us without us at the table, because I mean, that makes a difference with the decision making. And there's some organizations, and I have to admit, occasionally we would get a call in advance if something is going to be happening or if it's going to be announced. Our preference is that you call us before it's going to be announced, so we know that it's coming down the pipe and we can call some people and get some views. So I think when they're making the decision on that, the folks give the appearance of listening and trying to do that. That's why I sit in on the chamber sessions that are done 3 times a week. And people have to realize that we're in business too. And one of the changes that I actually led and got the provincial government to change was having an emergency act to allow for virtual annual meetings, because June, as you know, is that time of the year, and there's no policy that was in place because most bylaws are set up to have face-to-face for AGMs, and they were able to enact that. I think Ontario, was one of the first provinces to do it, but Nova Scotia hadn't at the time. So those are the kind of things that we're there for. I think there's not sufficient of a recognition that we can provide more to the economy than just being somebody, your token Black person at the table, but making a major stuff. So pushing pushing the envelope. I mean, I think that's what we're here for. So we have to do that as an organization. And if there's things that, whether women's being marginalized or others, we'll try. I believe that's what you're asking, Sylvia, but I'm not sure.
So thanks, Rustum. That's a great response. I appreciate it. And you have multi-sector focus within the discussions. It's good. So just the other thing I would add on to my thinking in terms of the question is, I think definitely probably a lobby piece that might relate to, maybe relates to data in the sense about what this national body is knowing about and what the affiliates can contribute to that. And there may also be evidencing an education piece, because maybe we as Black business owners who oftentimes we talk about a side hustle of our work, and maybe we're not like explicit enough or showing up kind of concretely enough to know the depth of those numbers and the contribution to the economy. So there, as I said, there might be kind of an enrichment or an advancing of the data collection that we may already know now, formally and informally, depending on organizations such as BBI here and others that I don't know the names of across the country, but also an education piece to us who operate businesses. That's why I was wondering about kind of the different names there and how they're perceived and valued. So yeah.
So once you get out of the structures, then a lot of what you described would be social enterprises, which can make that impact, and it's recognized. I think it was Nadine at the last meeting we were talking about. Is it Little Jamaica, where there's
Yes.
a lot of informal companies that like you speak about, and that's an economy that's very well known in the construction sector. But just a note of caution is in these times, the challenge that they have is that because they're in the informal sector, they don't show up when the government is sending money through CRA because they haven't been performing that. So sometimes it works one way and the other way it's tricky.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's an education process. I find that it's an ongoing education and information around what we need to do to get our businesses ready for the procurement process, especially if we want large government contracts.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia, for your question, and thank you, Rustum. Our next question comes from Charles Milton. Charles?
Thank you. So I actually have another question following off of what Sylvia said, but I might save that one for a little bit later. Rustum, you know what I'm doing at this point in time, but based on the nature of the question, I just want to give a little bit of introduction for everyone else who's listening. My name is Charles Milton. I'm the founder of a tech startup in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We're called Versity.ca, and we're an online scholarship streamlining platform for students and community organizations and sponsors who want to help students bridge the opportunity gap. So with that being said, we're pre-development right now, and we're going to be doing our development this summer. We're going to be getting the MVP ready, and we're looking to start marketing for revenue come September, October. One of the things we were looking at is a dual-sided market where we were looking at a small price point for end users as well as a price point for the organizations that we're going to be assisting in processing the scholarships and awards that they happen to have. But Nadine was earlier mentioning about procurement. Now, somebody like myself who's running a company that's pre-revenue at this point in time, as well as somebody who is running a company that typically wouldn't be taking on government contracts for things like paving or anything like that, I'm beginning to wonder as well if the government might still be able to be a client or revenue source for us, where we're a social impact company. We're actually looking to register as a CIC, community impact community interest company, and we're looking to help students bridge the opportunity gap, so give them opportunity and education. In a situation like this, where in Nova Scotia, I know the Labor and Advanced Education, they have scholarships and sponsors that they provide to students on an annual basis for either vocational training at college or even university training. Is there an opportunity to approach the government and try to onboard them as a client of ours to perhaps either one, divert costs to the end users, who would be the students themselves, or to find another way of perhaps getting them to buy bulk licensing of access to the platform to be able to make it easily distributable to marginalized, minoritized, or racialized individuals who aren't actually represented in the post-secondary community.
So thanks, Charles. And Charles he's a serial entrepreneur. He's got a heck of a mind. And, he's one of the guys who is a joy to work with, just because of the energy that he brings to the table.
Thank you.
And very, very independent. So the first part of I'm not sure if it's a question. There's some comments you made about the two levels. That's more common than you might think. I mentioned Dr. Kirmir earlier on with the dry AIDS test, but he had also developed a product called Quick Clog, which helped to test for test the blood when you're diabetes and other types of trauma as well. And he was doing the same thing you said. He was selling to the rich countries at one price, and to the developing countries in Africa and so on at a different price, right? So he was using the money that he made. So he said, if I'm saving heart attacks in the U.S., I'm saving lives in Africa. So that kind of concept is a social-minded business, and I commend you for thinking along those lines. And it's not as off as you might think. In terms of the comments you made for procurement and so on, like netting question is really good, because there's no company that's too small. My comments were just really saying that they take into consideration capacity. So if you see an oil company and you were going to be more than 50% on your revenue, then it affects that. But the idea that the government, and I think, I can always give you offline where the procurement office is, but the public service do go out and aggressively try to get small companies, especially from diverse companies, involved in their system. They were supposed to attend the Black Summit, which was in Halifax, that got canceled because of COVID, and they actually believe in supporting and bringing sufficient companies in, because it comes back to the point I made earlier on. Some of the contracts, some of the folks who would hire for that have budget ceilings that would be able to do that. And depending on the size that you're looking at, it may not have to go to competition. It could be somebody across from you who can make that buy on behalf of the government. And some of the folks, for you, because you're across from our office, we can direct you to some of the folks who speak to the public service. They're right behind Scotiabank, for those of you who are not in Halifax, in that area, who can help with that. And they aggressively go out, not only the Black community, they actually aggressively go out to be included in getting that sector more off the government spend. And I think with your product, there's some areas. I think you also asked about, in terms of supports, but Innova, Edunova is one of the agencies that may be able to move along that side. And obviously, labor and advanced education, you mentioned, I think you're familiar with some of those who do some of that. DBDLI may actually be able to navigate some of it, but if you have actually, and for those of you who actually, it's an acronym, DBDLI is the Delmore Body Their Learning Institute, and Sylvia Paris, who's on the line, she's in charge of that. And Labor and Advanced Education is a provincial department that does a lot of that spend. So you're well in line to looking at what can be used and take advantage of the COVID situation as well.
That kind of leads to my second question. You were talking about individuals who are trying to reach out to the African Canadian, African Nova Scotian communities, and trying to start work with Black businesses. We have a lot of Black businesses or Black inventors, Black business people across Canada who have made significant contributions to the Canadian economy or to Canadian life in general. whether it's going from the discovery of like how to use insulin for diabetes to you're talking about Dr. Kimura, or even if we want to go as simple but big to Canadians to putting sugar in your Tim Hortons coffee every single morning. These are all contributions that we've made from the African Canadian community. But myself as a founder from a startup, I've been navigating the community now for the last 3.5 years, and I'm beginning to get a much better understanding of how to get funding. What you were saying earlier on about knowing their mandates, what their strategies are, and aligning with that is key. I understand that. But I'm curious to know as well, Sylvia mentioned earlier, there's multiple different things that people are looking at. Like you have female-led businesses, you have things directed towards specific industries, whether it's going to be education or other verticals. But are there grants out there that are set specifically aside for the people of our own cultural demographic that we might be able to tap into, that either the provincial government or the federal government has set aside, saying that this is an amount of money that's set up specifically for Black founders or Black business people?
Yeah, so currently the short answer to that, there's no specific earmark funds although that's in place at this point. There's several simultaneous things that's going on in terms of like our own history, for example, was as a result of an attempt to provide grants and loans simultaneously. And what had happened is the guys who don't have to pay didn't pay, but then the guys who had to pay, who had the loans, won't pay. And so the funding quickly dissipated. So what the current situation now, most of the grants that are in place, or what can be considered to be grants outside of the COVID, are found in different support, purchase of expertise and those type of strategies, more than giving someone an operational grant that's flexible, so to speak, right? So if folks have, and that's one of the areas where we try to filter and pass information out. An example in terms of your own sector, the last week when the Futurepreneur announcement came, there was some funding targeted for startup in the space that you currently occupy, and some of it would be grant, but they're usually tied to. They may say, well, this is for personnel, or this is for equipment, or that's how a lot of it happens. That makes it a little bit. There's none that's specifically tagged right now for the Black community in terms of granting. In terms of not-for-profits and capacity building, there's a project that we've been working on over the last year and a half to become intermediaries, to flow some funds to help with not-for-profit. But that's targeted to organizations, not-for-profits. I'm not sure if social enterprise would be a stress, but it wasn't seen to be a business support as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Rustum. Thank you very much.
No problem, Charles. Nice seeing you.
All right, thank you, Charles. Those are great questions. And again, thank you so much, Rustum. I think we have the last two questions. They're coming from Charles. I'm sorry, Cliff Linton. Cliff, can you go ahead, please?
Please mute.
Cliff, I'm sorry, we're not hearing you. Press the space bar, please.
Can you unmute him?
Okay, he's not muted. Okay, do you mind if I read the questions, Cliff, since I'm not able to hear you? Okay, so I'll ask the questions for Cliff. His first question, Rustum, is what are your thoughts on funding from other organizations other than government? For example, big online databases. So
there's a bright young entrepreneur that we have in Nova Scotia, a guy by the name of Ross Simmons, who's done a lot of work in that space and sits on our board. As a matter of fact, he won the Harry G. Road Young Entrepreneur Award last year. And he strongly believes that we need to pay more attention to the foundations and those different strategies. And so we actually as in BBI over the past 20 years, roughly 90% of our resources are government, 90, maybe even 95. We raise some on events and sponsorships, but we've never really aggressively taken up the big ask to those foundations. We know that those are big possibilities, and one of the things that we actually were a little bit hesitant on was preparing the documents and get the yes, and don't have sufficient of a product, because that can do more damage before. So we're trying to get comfortable with that. We've over the years, and I don't know how much folks know about our organization. We've actually get a fair amount of funding from the private sector, but right now it's really the chartered banks. Like some years ago when Hugh Nixon was the CEO for our bank, he saw our youth program, Business is Jamming, and he actually approached us to get the charitable status, which our Business is Jamming youth program has. And for those of you who follow the Hope Blooms, the kids with the salad dressing company, that was one of the products of the youth, the business camp. But what had happened with Royal Bank since then is that we managed to get the charitable address, and over the years they've invested in us in our different programming, and we felt comfortable. So if we did iCode, we'd go to them, and what started out, Cliff, at about a 5,000 to 10,000 a year program is as high as 50,000, 60,000 a year now from RBC, but it's tied to some. So we're proud of those strategies, and is that, again, same as in government, is that relationship, right? And I started out with Ross because I think he was the one who was pushing us to think that, hey, if we went to Google or something, we can get a bigger ask. And so that's a great idea. Maybe something that even us can do together.
Okay, thank you, Rustum. And Cliff's second question, I think we'll make this the last question for the day, unless you don't mind going beyond the 1 hour.
Is that me? Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm asking you if you mind going a little bit beyond the hour.
As long as my bladder would hold, I'm fine.
Okay, you'll tell me. So this is Cliff's last question. Where on the federal and provincial websites can one go to find the resources for funding?
Yeah, so right now, I had asked my team to see what we can pull up for Ontario in terms of your provincial stuff. But I think this is a good time to on the federal, the Canada.ca, if you went to the COVID economic response plan, there's a ton of information on what's out there. And because of the COVID, it would take you across different spheres and tie into all of the departments. So that would be easy. Cliff, I assume in Ontario, so I wouldn't take liberty on their websites, but I am sure that their provincial websites, and we can I'm sure Nadine can as well. We can acquire what to do. In Nova Scotia, it's the Department of Business that we would tap in on as well. But in addition to that, there's the Canadian Futures, which we call the CBDCs here. There are a lot of support information there, and the banks themselves have a lot of government information online. CBDCs as well. So we actually, what we did when this began, we actually went out and sourced the agencies federally provincially as well as the private sector resources with helpful websites. So with the Canada.ca, obviously, is the first one. Provincial one would be, then you have agriculture, retail, manufacturing sector association and exporters. They would have a lot of those. Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses would have chambers of commerce as well. Some KPMG and some of those accounted for, and university entrepreneurship groups usually have a lot of services. You guys are a little bit unfortunate in Toronto because it considered to be a high economic zone. In the east of Nova Scotia and in the rural setting, there's a lot of resources that provide strategies on there. So.
And those are just for Nova Scotians, or can someone
No, yeah, the ones that I identified there are right across, except for your own provincial organization. So like KPMG and all those, they have a lot of information on business loans and so on. And if I mean, if Clifton wants, you can direct a query directly to me, and I can make sure somebody
Okay.
back, or if you ask me, then I can supply it to.
Will do. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No, it was. I have 3 mics on this thing, and I guess I didn't plug in my mic correctly, but now I have it on the Logitech video, so I guess you can hear me.
Yeah.
So basically, that was the question that I wanted to know. Where can I go on any of the federal or provincial government websites to get funding for any projects or that I might be thinking to start up? Because in our
connection isn't stable right now.
Because in our community, there's a lot of concern that I have. My background is I'm a chemist, but I also volunteered for 32 years with the organization here in sports to get a lot of kids the scholarships south of the border. But in our community, there's a lack of knowledge in terms of how to go about doing it. A lot of kids don't even know where to start. They're taking the wrong courses in school. And that kind of idea, I guess, will start a small organization to inform a lot of the younger kids how to make sure you take the right credits from grade 9 right through to grade 12, so that you're prepared when a scholarship does come up, that you're ready to go forward. But that's basically, that's one of the reasons why I also brought up the thing about big online database. But I don't know if Nadine is still online, but I wanted to know if the Black professional organization here, business or professional organization, can get a license from the big online database, because they charter mostly to non-profit organizations, but they have a lot of funding. Here in Canada alone, you have like over 500, some are close to 1,000 different grants a year for different projects that they have across organizations here in Canada. And some of them are targeted towards groups that are marginalized. But it's a matter of getting in on that, writing the right proposals, getting someone to write the right proposals. I mean, I can do it myself, but I don't have the time because I'm always occupied with things. So Nadine, that's something that you could look into, bigonlinedatabase.com. And there's one here in Canada and one in the United States, you know.
Yeah, and you know, we had a workshop at the BBPA with, her name escapes me, but she ran 2 fundraising workshops on writing proposals.
Yes.
And yeah, and that's something, you know, we'll continue to do. In terms of the online database, we work with, like our agency works with Merck's. Are you familiar with Merck's?
I've heard of it, but that was a long time ago, way back in the day when our club was trying to get funding through, but is that a nonprofit or is it a?
Yeah, no, it's yeah, go ahead, Rustum, you can take it.
I was just saying, yeah, it's a registry for for the sector for
Yeah, but it's a registry, and a lot of the government contracts, and not just government, corporate contracts as well, is through that platform. It is not easy to navigate, and the process is not necessarily easy to navigate. But like Rustum's organization and the BBPA, we're here to help navigate those processes.
Yeah.
But I find that once you go through it, I think what's interesting is that you develop a template, and you sort of have your the areas, it gives you a long list of things you need to have, insurance, or your taxes, the business registration, all of that stuff, which is what I call the fundamentals and foundations of best business practices. So
Yes.
you'll have all of that lined up, and then, you go through the process, but it takes time. It takes a long time. It's not something you get overnight.
Yeah.
And, they say you never get it on the first win. You don't get it on the 10th win, but eventually when you land it, it's fantastic. And, we also have a partnership with CAMC, Canadian Aboriginal Minority Council, and Rustum spoke about that organization. And as a BBPA member, you get 30% off your first year as a CAMC member. And what CAMC does is that, again, it opens the door for procurement opportunities across all sectors, not just government, but corporate sectors as well.
Yes.
But CAMC also helps prepare businesses to get to go through the process, get to that level of submitting as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
And I think, I don't know if Sylvia is still on the line, but you mentioned the education piece. There are a lot of organizations in our community that help, you're talking about the scholarships and so on, that helps direct and navigate those areas as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, and thank you, Rustum, and thank you again, Cliff and Nadine. Great questions, awesome answers, very informational.
And Charles?
It is now a little.
It's 1 minute after. So I guess, does it have a time limit on this?
I think he's frozen, is he?
I'm not hearing somebody speaking.
You're a little bit frozen, Gavin.
You're frozen. Clifford asked you a question.
Oh, no, I was just, no, I'm good. No.
I think that we lost our host.
Yeah, we lost our host. Ross, are you there? Yeah, so so what? Oh, there he is. So I mean, it ends at 1, and so we always want to be respectful. Rustum, thank you so very much for your time. It is always a pleasure. Rustum is a great partner. He's also on the board of directors of the BBPA, and he's a vast wealth of information. And this is why he's a BBPA partner. And we're going to be doing more of this. More of this procurement talk, and more of the process. I think the next one, we're looking to do one with CAMC where we're navigating the process of what will happen. So please stay tuned. Join the BBPA, because this is part of your your membership work, is that we'll hold your hands through the process.
So Nadine, thank you very much as well. And I see Donna is on the call, which is good.
Yes.
And Gavin for hosting this. So it's absolute pleasure. And as I always told you, anything that I can do to help, willing to do that as much as possible. It's been,
thank you, Rustum. Thank you.
It's more painless than I thought, though. Yeah. I don't usually put my picture up, right?
You're seasoned. But Gavin, thank you very much. Great job. Thank you.
Good job, Gavin.
Thank you, guys. I would also like to remind you to please check out our social media outlets, our website, bbpa.org. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you need to contact us for any reason, our number here is 416-504-4097. I'll be happy to work with and, organize with any one of you. And thanks again for joining on this call. It was indeed an awesome experience. And I do agree with Nadine. I think that we need to have this particular topic introduced again at a later date. Very inspirational and informational. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our call.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again to you guys.
Okay.
Stay safe, everybody. Take care.
Safe.
Right.
And Alicia, good to see you. Are you still there? And Frederica, great to see you guys. And always, Donna, it's always a pleasure. And we have Elaine and Margaret and Virginia. And of course, Cliff and Charles.
Thank you.
Good. I'm glad you guys are here. Thank you for joining.
Okay. All the best. Bye.
All right. All the best to everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye. And
Bye-bye.
Debbie Scarrett, you're here. Good
Thanks
to see
all.
you.
Bye.